Hi, Jo.
Hi, Sue. How are you doing today?
Good.
Day 3, isolation. How's it going?
Bright and ready to go. Isolation. It's good because I've actually got some isolation right now. I've come upstairs to my desk from my 4 children that are downstairs running riot.
Okay, good. And I am now in the lounge, which I don't normally even get into the lounge in general terms, because everybody else is usually in here, but I'm in the lounge and everybody else seems to still be in bed. It's 10 o'clock in the morning.
It's funny, isn't it?
There you go.
I was thinking through the topic today, isolation. I was thinking, actually, isolation is really hard. And then I thought, oh, maybe it's not. When you're a parent, you're stuck at home with lots of children. Oh, and my next door neighbour's obviously emptying the rubbish out. When you're stuck at home with lots of children, actually, you're pretty desperate for a bit of isolation. I feel like right now I need isolation. And it's only day, what do we do?
That's what I mean.
Or day 2. I don't even know what day it is. You said to me earlier something about Friday, or I said something about Friday. You said that's today, Theo, and I thought, oh my gosh, is it Friday today? I actually don't know what day it is. So if any of our listeners out there can relate, let us know. Send us a message. Do you know what day it is today? I don't, until Jo told me this morning it was Friday.
Anyway, we are going to talk about isolation today, Sue, aren't we? And we can talk about it in fun terms and in very, very serious terms, because it is going to go from literally one side to the other, isn't it, for people? You know, as we say, we're quite enjoying a little bit of isolation at the moment. However...
Why attacking me? Sorry, I'm not very isolated. I won't squash it, but it's attacking me. Carry on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because there's, you know, we're in a very, very fortunate position, really. We do have children. We've got connection around us, and basic human connection is a need that we all have. You know, we are here for love and connection. So there's those people who are going to be isolated, who are going to be terribly, terribly lonely as well. And so it's going to go from one thing to the other, isn't it? And I think even if you have actually got a lot of people around you, you can actually feel really lonely even in a room full of people, can't you? So we can be isolated even in a house full of people at times.
Yeah. And look, our heart goes out to listeners that are on their own. Either, I mean, some of you I know split relationships quite recently, and you're in a place of grieving and you can't meet up with that person to have conversations. The elderly, the vulnerable, the homeless. There's so many different categories of people, aren't there, that are severely isolated at the time, and especially those of you that were feeling isolated before you were then put into lockdown. So our heart goes out to you. There's so many people feeling desperate in isolation. So we're with you. That's why we're actually doing these recordings every day, to connect with you and to put the message out there that nobody has perfect lives, but in sharing our stories, then we can normalize the feelings that we have during this time.
Because, and like, if you think about people's personalities as well, we were saying earlier, like, if, you know, extroverts and introverts are going to deal with this lockdown in very different ways, aren't they? Introverts are usually people who generally enjoy their own company, like to spend quiet time alone in isolation. They may thrive, but I think even that it will drive them up the wall a little bit if they're totally alone. Whereas extroverts are often bouncing off the wall and need, like, I have friends that I know who need to have social contact every day, and they need to see not just one person, but they need to see several people every day to keep them stimulated, to keep them going. I think I'm a bit of an extroverted introvert, so I love that stimulation of seeing people, but I also do love that isolated time. However, I can see the difference between the two different personalities and how it will affect people in different ways.
Totally. And I mean, you're lucky, aren't you, that you can enjoy both your downtime and your time connected with other people. And I guess the advantage of being in lockdown today is that we have social media. But that's also a challenge, isn't it? And I know that one of our mutual friends asked us the other day, how do you deal with screen time? Because I'm finding with 4 late teens, early 20s, that I was in a place of trying to restrict social media time for them and send them out on the street, send them out to go meet with their friends rather than be on the internet. And we just got to quite a sort of mutually agreeable place where they weren't on devices too much. And now I'm actually saying to them, your friends are so important, connections so important. Go and call a friend, go and get a group chat going. So now I've gone to the other extreme, and I'm finding that quite hard to balance. And I'm sure that lots of listeners, again, their big question is, we we're trying to protect their device time. And now what do we do about it? And that's a big question, isn't it, that we put out there. Put it to you, Jo. What do you do about device time? Because your 4 children are really sociable, aren't they? They're always out with friends the whole time. How are they managing it?
Well, I think there's I'll get my words out in a minute. I think it depends what they're doing on their device as well, to be honest with you. If they're literally just sitting there watching Netflix for the entire day, well, that's probably not going to be the best thing for them, is it? However, if they are connecting with friends and having good, nice conversations and relationships and having a bit of fun online, well, that's good for the soul. And then also if they're going to do some schoolwork, well, that's great, educational, whatever. And then if they do watch a little bit of Netflix and here and there, then that's not going to be an issue. I think it all depends on what it is they're doing online. Like, I would rather my children didn't go off to their rooms and spend tons and tons of time online. However, so we're just managing it in different ways. I will make sure that they exercise every day. We'll go and get some fresh air every day. We have family, and now we would normally always have a family dinner together. However, once they get out of bed, they might have breakfast, but I think we'll definitely always have family lunches and family dinners together. So we're all coming together for a certain amount of time, device free.
So structure, I think, is really important, isn't it? Because isolation obviously has a psychological effect on us, and it also has a physiological effect in terms of our bodies carrying extra stress, anxiety, and so on. It was interesting yesterday because we decided to go for an early evening walk, and around the area were lots of families with mother and father and the 2 children, or the 4 children, or just a parent with the children, single parent with the children. And it was something that you never ever see. We always see adults with adults, the elderly with the elderly, and the teens with the teens. And even my daughters pointed out the fact that they would never be out with parents, they'd be out with their friends. And yet there were just units of families keeping in isolation together. We were all doing this sort of, 100 meters apart, on crossing the road when we saw somebody, which seemed really strange. But Lucy said to me, do you think this is a return to the family and the basic foundation of society as we knew it, where, as you say, you're having family dinners together? So we're trying to find things to do in our homes to bring connection, to stop that isolation. I find it's fascinating because we don't yet know where this is going to go in terms of reconnecting people in different ways, because isolation through this period and journey, I guess we're trying to find different ways to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've suggested to the kids that we have like a games night as well here and there, so it's not just them going off to their room, that we turn it into a little bit of a competition, play cards or play chess or that kind of stuff. Just take it back to basics, and because we will literally go stir crazy if we're just watching Netflix and on social media all day. There has to be something else for our minds to do. Yes. So we'll probably get the jigsaw puzzle out and stick it on the table, because things like that brings conversation, doesn't it, as well? And it keeps your mind occupied while you're sitting there doing something as mundane as a jigsaw puzzle. You can't actually be worried about anything else because you're too busy looking for those bloody little pieces, trying to piece them together. That actually, it's almost like it's like being in meditation, isn't it? Because you're being mindful in the moment rather than having all those millions of thoughts. I can't go out and I can't see my friends, thinking all of those negative thoughts, and instead just do something. It's like reading a book. If you're reading a book and you're absolutely absorbed in it, you're in the book, aren't you? It's such a lovely feeling to be in a book rather than having all of those mega thoughts going on in your head. Whatever works for you, I suppose.
And when it comes to puzzles in our family, the last bit is always the sky, and you've just got this endless blue. And you're so right, aren't you? You just literally focused on where's the bit of blue, and all you're grateful for is there's a little cloud, so you can connect the cloud. But you're disconnected then from everything else going on. And it's really interesting because this morning I was researching Terry Waite. So for those of you that don't know Terry Waite, he was sent as a special envoy to Beirut to release hostages in the late 80s. And he was then captured, and he was held in solitary confinement for 5 years. And he spent up to 23 hours a day chained to a radiator. And he says that the most important thing for him was that you can't live outside of the moment, because he never knew when time was up. I mean, we in New Zealand are told a month, it could be extended to 6 weeks. We have a rough idea. So we've got a strategy in place to say, we will do this because at the end of a month, hopefully there's a positive outcome, i.e. the number of cases has reduced with the virus. He didn't have that. So it was an endless journey. And you think of Nelson Mandela in prison for all those years. Terry Waite says, when you're in the present moment, all you need to do is that present moment. If you're on here suffering from anxiety and depression, then stay in the present moment. And he said what he did actually, he wrote stories in his head, which he then put onto paper when he came out. So he was writing a book in his head. He was documenting the stories in his head. And he says also that everyone needs a framework within which to work. So because everybody listening has lost that framework of jobs, school routines, working with the children, or the elderly getting together in social groups, then we need to create our new framework. And I know yesterday we were talking about goal setting. It comes back to that, doesn't it, Joe? That within isolation, we can do something to help ourselves. Instead of feeling disempowered, we can re-empower ourselves by us creating a new framework. And for you, Joe, that's family dinner, playing games. For other people, it might be connecting on social media. Whatever it looks like for you, create structure so that you've got something to do. And again, yesterday we were talking about joining something or creating a hobby or doing the thing you've always wanted to do. Within that framework, we create structure so we can reduce isolation.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, solitude revitalizes us, doesn't it? We need time alone. Whereas isolation, if we are truly, truly isolated and we don't keep our mind occupied, isolation can kill. You know, you think about people who go into the cells when they're in prison and they get put in isolation, and you hear about these horror stories and they're left there for so long and they end up going insane because they haven't kept within themselves and they just haven't had that. They've never had any tools to help them do that. They've just been shoved in isolation. And Terry Waite, I mean, what an amazing, amazing man. He was obviously an amazing man anyway to be doing the job he was doing, but to have that strength of mind to get through 5 years is just so incredible. But it shows it can be done. It gives us hope. That's what our podcast is all about. It's about bringing people together to show you that you're never alone. Well, we've got a month or maybe 2 months in isolation or whatever the case may be. He did 5 years and he came out a strong person, and he still came out helping others. So we've got hope.
And he says within solitude, you can actually, when you shut down, excuse me, and you're only connected with yourself, you find abilities and skills that you never knew you had. It's quite remarkable. Yeah. And there is that other side, isn't there? We always talk about the sort of yin and the yang and two sides, the duality, the good of the good things in isolation and also the negative things in isolation. And actually sometimes when we sit within ourselves, we don't like ourselves very much, most of us. When we sit within ourselves, we have to deal with our feelings of insecurity, of rejection, of anger, of rage, of hatred, of bitterness and unforgiveness, all the things that keep us trapped in ego and keep us trapped within ourselves. We have to deal with, we have to sit with ourselves. And that's why we hate being on our own. It's why we often busy ourselves with work and shopping and committees and people, so that we don't have to actually deal with it. So the good side of it is we're forced to deal with this. You and I, Joe, have to deal with all our crap.
Did you know, we're people who've worked on ourselves anyway, but there is isolation. There's a quote by Franz Kafka that says, isolation is a way to know ourselves. And that's exactly what you've just said, Sue, because we are so good at being busy in life. That's one thing that us humans have now got down pat. We're really, really good at being busy. Especially when you've got children or a big career or, a project on the go. We go. And we're masking things. We're not taking into consideration our experiences and our emotions. We're just on the rat race of life, whereas the isolation is a time to look within. And you're right, some people really don't like themselves, or some people are in such grief, trauma, shame, that it's hard to look within. So I'm not underestimating any of that. And I know, and I speak from experience because I've done the hard work. I have done the hard work, as have you. So we have looked within and we have looked at our flaws and all of our experiences, and we've worked on healing. Now, this might be a really confronting time for some people as well, because it will be the first time that they've had some quiet time to actually do that.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I think back to my story in 2003 when my children were abducted, aged 1, 3, and 5, and I was pregnant with my fourth. And my book, subsequent book called Taken, which you can find on Amazon sites and all the bookstores online. The story in that is about rejection when there was false accusations made against me of mental illness and supposedly harming my children. All my friends walked away, and I was in a village in London where people crossed the road if they saw me because of, you know, just fear of who I was. And so I lost my children, I lost my home, I lost my income, I lost my sense of identity through the rejection I felt. And you've got one as well. I've got the same fly here. That's weird. Maybe it's just on screen. The sense of isolation I felt was just so extreme, it tortured me. And I would literally sit on a sofa, and I couldn't bear to be by myself. The feeling that I had of rage and anger at what had happened overnight, and I guess this is similar because it's overnight. Then I went through this journey of being in isolation because I had no friends. I had family that was supportive, but one was overseas. My mother had passed away. And I had to come to terms with myself and the feelings of shame I carried and the self-hatred. And it was a really hard place. It was black and it was bleak and it was dark, and there was no other way to describe it. And I know that the Dark Night of the Soul, who wrote The Dark Night of the Soul? Amazing story, amazing man. Can't think of his name. Ancient Christian mystic.
Okay.
Wrote The Dark Night of the Soul, and it is a place where you go into the darkness of your soul. And it, as I say, it is bleak and it's lonely and it's isolating, but yet out of that place in me, and this is testimony to my story only, came the most amazing journey of finding self-love, of finding recovery and finding healing and finding who I was, and actually being able to stand up and say, I am not mentally ill, I've not harmed my children, to discover the truth. And truth is such an important journey for us to go on. Who is the truth of who I am? What is the truth of who I am? Do I like myself? What are my abilities and strengths that I can bring to the world and share with others? Because it's not just about taking, it's about giving. And again, you and I then talk a lot about gratitude. I then started to come to a place where I could be really grateful for the little tiny things I had in my life. And from gratitude, then came an abundance of provision from the universe, and even to the place where my children were returned home. But the beauty, the joy, and the love that came from that broken place were absolutely tremendous. And that's something I think the dualities, the suffering with the love, the two go hand in hand, don't they? So with the isolation can also come incredible growth if we just stay with it. But it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's really tough.
Growth is never easy, so we know that. So I think what I'm trying to say to listeners is, in isolation, you will feel many different feelings. You know, there may be anxiety, there may be stress, there may be moments of happiness, or lots of happiness, hopefully. There may be lots of looking within, and that is very, very confronting. We know that. It's very confronting. And yeah, there may be boredom or many other feelings, but again, they're all okay, they're all valid, they're all your feelings, it's how you're feeling.
St. John of the Cross just come to mind, Dark Night of the Soul. And if you guys want an amazing book, this is an amazing book, The Naked Now. You won't be able to buy it, I don't think. Well, we can't buy it in New Zealand because you can't get deliveries anymore, but you can get an audio version of it. The Naked Now, sitting in the naked now, sitting in the moment, rather than sitting in the past with regrets, without sitting in the future of the hopes and dreams. Sit in the naked now and be in the moments. And as you say, Jo, if you're in a puzzle, that's all you can do, isn't it? Just be concentrating on that piece you're trying to find. Be in the now and build some structure into your day so that you can have family time, or you can have that Skype call to your grown-up children, to your grandchildren, connect with friends. Yesterday we had a really nice afternoon, actually. We had afternoon tea and we Skyped a girl that we know is on her own. So she kind of sat at the table and had afternoon tea with us. It was a bit mean because she couldn't eat the chocolate cake. But she was at the table and she said, I feel I'm sitting at your table with you. And I thought, gosh, that's such a great thing. You know, if you've got a family situation, you know, somebody's on their own, you've got an elderly relative, you've got whoever it is, Skype them at a meal time, Skype them when you're all together, or play a game and have them on board, because then they'll feel connected, even though they can't join in with you. They'll actually feel part of your family. Bring people in.
Totally. So yeah, try to think of it as solitude rather than isolation, and keep your mind occupied as much as you can. That's probably the best advice. But then have them quiet moments as well.
There's some amazing research that's taken place on isolation, and they did it with astronauts who quite clearly isolated for a period of time, those that are incarcerated in prisons, those that are immune compromised, and those that work in the Antarctic. And they said, isolation does actually kill. At the worst point, in the best case scenario we've got that you can survive it and make the most of it and find love and everything else, the worst case scenario is that you die. And in the war, they tortured prisoners of war by putting them in isolation. That was the greatest form of torture. As you said at the very beginning, Jo, we're born for connection. We're meant to be with people. So it's the topic of today encompasses so many different things, doesn't it? And I know that with you listeners, it will resonate as well. We would love you to message us. We'd love you to just write some comments on our Facebook page. We're Pods with Posh and Paul. Write some comments on there so that we know what you're facing, what you're feeling, and then we can connect with you.
Lovely.
And I just think also, can we introduce Barbara and Harriet?
What, our plants?
Yeah. Harriet's on the right. That's Harriet. Needs a bit of water, I think, today. But I have to say, Barbara's looking very healthy.
That's because she's not real.
Is she not? Oh no, I'm devastated. I've thought all this time she was real.
I do have real plants, I promise you, but just not this one.
Oh, she looks so real. I thought she was real. I'm absolutely mortified. You ruined my day. I thought, gosh, Jo, that's quite amazing because you are a girl that rushes around all day long. Fitness classes, exercise, children galore. You are incredible. And yet you managed to water your plants, keep it looking so healthy. Mine's looking a bit frail and fragile. That was a gift from a friend, by the way, and I've been asked to really look after it. And I'm not quite sure it's going to look much better. But I'm devastated. Barbara's not real.
Sorry, I burst your bubble. I can't be perfect at everything or anything because perfect doesn't exist.
So, Jo, what are we talking on tomorrow?
Don't know, it's a surprise for both of us.
It's a surprise.
It's a surprise for both of us and for everybody else. Ooh.
What are you doing for the rest of the day? We're working, aren't we?
Okay. I'll tell you that's a secret as well.
Well, I'm working today.
Have we started?
And we've got a great guest coming on board this afternoon. We've got one of our teen pods coming on board this afternoon because we don't only have adult pods, we have teen pods encouraging people through mental health in teen years. And she is coming on board to talk about her story of isolation. No.
Body image.
Self-body image. She starts off mirror, mirror on the wall. She's got a lovely story. She won the speaking contest in her school with her short, about 6-minute talk, I think. So she will be really encouraging. So we're going to release that probably next week. But do follow us on Pods with Posh and Paul on Facebook. Click on to any of the podcast apps and you will listen to our podcasts, and like us on Instagram. Give us a review on iTunes. Are you there? You're very good at that. You keep freezing.
I'm still here. I'm still listening to you.
You do make the most extreme faces. Did you see the picture I posted yesterday of you with a funny face?
Yeah, all of them have got funny faces. I know.
Well, you know, when you start a YouTube talk, it starts at the beginning. It just captures a frame, doesn't it? And at the beginning, I don't know which ones to choose of you because you always have a really extreme face. But I love them all. They're great. Anyway, from us, we'll leave you to get on with your day.
Okay, lots of love. Love, light and peace.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.